Blessed love and peace in Rastafari. This is a recitation of Tobadi Goga Dao, Torah, Bhagavad Gita, Dekanakaya, Dhammapada, Gospels, Quran, and Tao Te Ching. This week is portion numero 49, which is Ki Teitzei, which includes from Torah, Parsha Ki Teitzei, which is Devarim 21, 10 a 25, 19. It includes Kata Upanishad, chapter 3. From the Bhagavad Gita, it is the Kashatra Kisatra Yavi Bhaga Yoga numero 13. From the Tao Te Ching, it is chapter 20 and chapter 70 and 71. From the 4 books, it is the Doctrine of Mean, part 1. From the Digha Nikaya, it is the Sangiti Sutta, chapter 33, numero 33, chapter 1. From the Dhammapada, it is the Niraya Vaga, numero 22. From the Gospels, it is Acts, chapters 13 a 15, and from the Quran, it is Surah Al-Abasa, Surah Al-Takwir, Surah Al-Infitar, Surah Al-Tatfif, and Surah Al-Inshikak, which is Surahs numero 84. And from Tanakh, it is Yehoshua, chapters 10 a 12. Bismillah ar-Rahmani ar-Rahim. Allahu Akbar. Dao ke dao fe cheng dao, min ke min fe cheng min. Ja Rastafari. Deus noster qui es in celle sanctificator nomen tuum, vahe guru sanam. Baruch ata Elohim, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kasanu b'mitzvot David zivanu sok b'revai Torah. Amen. Kyrie eleison, sivamas tu savejikatehi, sabe sata bhavantu sukhitata. Vagabia. Aquaba upendo na amani, fakir nisalami, chintadam permen, liba vamea womanjiga. Ubuntu shabana fakitka. Seshe, como senina namo arigato pelamayela waka toka loka shingun, go managan. God, we thank you for all that you bless us. Ata jamia yat afanami. Bado, ahom, shanti, shanti, shanti. Amen. Torah. Ki Teitzei, Devarim 21, 10 a 25, 19. If you go out to war against your enemies, and Elohim your God will deliver him into your hands, and you take his captives, and you see amongst the captives a beautiful woman, and you desire her, and you may take her for yourself as a wife. You shall bring her into your home, and she shall shave her head and let her nails grow. And she shall remove the garment of her captivity from upon herself, and stay in your house, and weep for her far and her more for a full month. After that you may be intimate with her and possess her, and she will be a wife for you. And it will be, if you do not desire her, then you shall send her away wherever she wishes, but you shall not sell her for money. You shall not keep her as a servant, because you have afflicted her. If a man has 2 wives, one beloved and the other despised, and they bear him sons, the beloved one and the despised one, and the firstborn son is from the despised one, then it will be on the day the husband bequeaths his property to his sons, that he will not be able to give the son of the beloved wife birthright precedence over the son of the despised wife, the actual firstborn son. Rather, he must acknowledge the firstborn, the son of the despised wife, and give him a double share in all that he possesses, because he, the firstborn son, is the first of his strength. Then he has the birthright entitlement. If a man has a wayward and rebellious son who does not obey his far or his more, and they chasten him, and he still does not listen to them, his far and his more shall take hold of him and bring him out to the elders of his city and to the gate of his place. And they shall say to the elders of his city, this son of ours is wayward and rebellious. He does not obey us. He is a glutton and a guzzler. And all the men of his city shall pelt him to death with stones, and he shall die. So shall you clear out the evil from amongst you, and all Israel will listen in fear. If a man commits a sin for which he is sentenced to death, and he is put to death, you shall then hang him on a pole. But you shall not leave his body on the pole overnight. Rather, you shall bury him on the same day. For hanging human corpse is a blasphemy of God, and you shall not defile your land, which Elohim your God is giving you as an inheritance. You shall not see your brother's ox or sheep straying and ignore them. Rather, you shall return them to your brother. If your brother is not near to you, or if your brother is not near you, or if you do not know him, you shall bring it into your house, and it shall be with you until your brother seeks it out, whereupon you shall return it to him. So shall you do with his donkey, and so shall you do with his garment, and so shall you do with any lost article of your brother, which he has lost and you have found. You shall not ignore it. You shall not see your brother's donkey or his ox fallen under his load on the road and ignore them. Rather, you shall pick up the load with him. A man's attire shall not be on a woman, nor may a man wear a woman's garment, because whoever does these things is an abomination to Elohim your God. If a bird's nest chances before you on the road, on any tree, or on the ground, and it contains fledglings or eggs, if the moor is sitting upon the fledglings or upon the eggs, you shall not take the moor upon the young. You shall send away the moor, and then you may take the young for yourself, in order that it should be beneficial for you, and you should lengthen your days. When you build a new house, you shall make a guardrail for your roof, so that you shall not cause blood to be spoiled in your house, that the one who falls should fall from it the roof. You shall not sow your vineyard together with a mixed variety of species, lest the increase, even the seed that you sow, and the yield of the vineyard both become forbidden. You shall not plow with an ox and a donkey together. You shall not wear a mixture of wool and linen together. You shall make for yourself twisted threads on the four corners of your garments with which you cover yourself. If a man takes a wife, is intimate with her, and despises her, and he makes libelous charges against her, and gives her a bad name, saying, I took this woman, and when I came to her, I did not find any evidence of virginity for her. Then the girl's far and her moor shall obtain evidence of the girl's virginity, and take it out to the elders of the city to the gate. And the girl's far shall say to the elders, I gave my daughter to this man as a wife, and he despised her. And behold, he made libelous charges, saying, I did not find evidence of your daughter's virginity, but this is the evidence of my daughter's virginity. And they shall spread the garment before the elders of the city. Then the elders of the city shall take the man and chasten him. And they shall fine him 100 shekels of silver, because he defamed a virgin of Israel, and he give it to the girl's far, and she shall be his wife. He shall not send her away all the days of his life. But if this matter was true, indeed no evidence of the girl's virginity was found, they shall take the girl out to the entrance of her father's house, and the men of her city shall pelt her with stones, and she shall die, for she did a disgraceful thing in Israel, to commit adultery in her father's house. So shall you clear away the evil from amongst you. If a man is found lying with a married woman, even both of them shall die, the man lying with the woman and the woman. So shall you clear away the evil from Israel. If there is a virgin girl betrothed to a man, and another man finds her in the city and lies with her, you shall take them both out to the gate of that city, and you shall pelt them with stones, and they shall die. The girl because she did not cry out, even though she was in the city, and the man because he violated his neighbor's wife. So shall you clear away the evil from amongst you. But if a man finds the betrothed girl in the field, and the man overpowers her and lies with her, then only the man who lay with her shall die. Whereas to the girl you shall do nothing. The girl did not commit a sin deserving of death. For just as a man rises up against his fellow and murders him, so is this case. Because he found her in the field, the betrothed girl had cried out, but there was no one to save her. If a man finds a virgin who was not betrothed, and seizes her and lies with her, and they are found, the man who lay with her shall give 50 shekels of silver to the girl's far, and she shall become his wife, because he violated her. He shall not send her away all the days of his life. A man shall not take his far's wife, nor shall he uncover the corner of his far's cloak. A man with injured testicles, or whose member is cut, may not enter the assembly of Elohim. A bastard shall not enter the assembly of Elohim, even the 10th generation shall not enter the assembly of Elohim. An Ammonite or Moabite shall not enter the assembly of Elohim, even the 10th generation shall never enter the assembly of Elohim, because they did not greet you with bread and water on the way when you left Egypt, and because the people of Moab, hired Balaam the son of Beor from Petor in Aram Naharaim against you to curse you. But Elohim your God did not want to listen to Balaam, so Elohim your God transformed the curse into a blessing for you, because Elohim your God loves you. You should not ever seek out their well-being or their benefit all your days. You should not despise an Edomite, for he is your brother. You should not despise an Egyptian, for you were a sojourner in his land. Children are born to them in the third generation may enter the assembly of Elohim. When a camp goes out against your enemies, you shall beware of everything evil. If there is amongst you a man who is unclean because of a nocturnal emission, he shall go outside the camp, he shall not come within the camp. And it shall be towards evening, he shall bathe in water, and when the soleil sets, he may come within the camp. And you shall have a designated place outside the camp, so that you can go out there to utilize it as a privy. And you shall keep a stake in addition to your weapons, and it shall be when you sit down outside to relieve yourself, you shall dig with it, and you shall return and cover your excrement. For Elohim your God goes along in the midst of your camp to rescue you and to deliver your enemies before you. Therefore your camp shall be holy, so that Elohim should not see anything unseemly amongst you and would turn away from you. You shall not deliver a slave to his master if he seeks refuge with you from his master. Rather he shall be allowed to reside amongst you wherever he chooses, within any of your cities where it is beneficial for him. You shall not oppress him. There shall be not a prostitute of the daughters of Israel, and there shall not be a male prostitute of the sons of Israel. You shall not bring a prostitute's fee or the price of a dog to the house of Elohim your God for any vow, because both of them are an abomination to Elohim your God. You shall not give interest to your brother, whether it be interest on money, interest on food, or interest on any other item for which interest is normally taken. You may, however, give interest to a Gentile, but to your brother you shall not give interest, in order that Elohim your God shall bless you in every one of your endeavors on the land to which you are coming to possess. When you make a vow to Elohim your God, you shall not delay in paying it, for Elohim your God will demand it of you, and it will be counted as a sin for you. But if you shall remain from making vows, you will have no sin. Observe and do what is emitted from your lips, just as you have pledged to Elohim your God, as a donation which you have spoken with your mouth. When you enter your neighbor's vineyard, you may eat as many grapes as you desire until you are sated, but you shall not put any into your vessel. When you enter your neighbor's standing grain, you may pick the ears with your hand, but you shall not lift a sickle upon your neighbor's standing grain. When a man takes a wife and is intimate with her, and it happens that she does not find favor in his eyes, because she discovers in her an unseemly virtuous character, and he writes for her a bill of divorce and places it into her hand and sends her away from his house. And she leaves his house and goes and marries another man. If the latter husband hates her and writes her a bill of divorce and places it into her hand and sends her away from his house, or if the latter husband who took her as a wife dies, her first husband who had sent her away may not take her again to be his wife, since she was defiled to him, for that is an abomination before Elohim. And you shall not bring sin to the land Elohim your God gives you for an inheritance. When a man takes a new wife, he shall not go out in the army, nor shall he be subjected to anything associated with it. He shall remain free for his home for 1 year and delight his wife whom he has taken. One shall not take the lower or the upper millstone as security for a loan, because he is taking a life as security. If a man is discovered kidnapping any person from amongst his brothers of the children of Israel, and treats him as a slave and sells him, that thief shall die, so that you shall call out evil from amongst you. Be cautious regarding the legion of Tza'arat, to observe meticulously, and you shall do according to all that the Levite priests instruct you. As I have commanded them, so shall you observe to do. Remember what Elohim your God did to Miriam on the way when you went out of Egypt. When you lend your fellow Jewish brethren any item, you shall not enter his home to take his security. You shall stand outside, and the man to whom you are extending the loan shall bring the security out to you outside. And if he is a poor man, you shall not lie down to sleep with his security. You shall return the security to him by sunset, so that he may lie down to sleep in his garment, and he will bless you, and it will be counted for you as merit before Elohim your God. And you shall not withhold the wages of a poor or destitute hired worker, or of your brothers, or of your strangers who are in your land within your cities. You shall give him his wage on his day, and not let the soleil set over it, for he is poor, and he risks his life for it, so that he should not cry out to Elohim against you, so that there should be sin upon you. For I shall not be put to death because of sons, nor shall sons be put to death because of fathers. Each man shall be put to death for his own transgression. You shall not pervert the judgment of a stranger or an orphan, and you shall not take a widow's garment as security for a loan. You shall remember that you were a slave in Egypt, and Elohim your God redeemed you from there. Therefore I command you to do this thing. When you reap your harvest in your field and forget a sheaf in the field, you shall not go back to take it. It shall be left for the stranger, the orphan, and the widow, so that Elohim your God will bless you in all that you do. When you beat your olive tree, you shall not deglorify it by picking all its fruit after you. It shall be left for the stranger, the orphan, and the widow. When you pick up the grapes of your vineyard, you shall not glean after you. It shall be left for the stranger, the orphan, and the widow. You shall remember that you were a slave in the land of Egypt. Therefore I command you to do this thing. If there is a quarrel between men, and they approach the tribunal, and they, the judges, judge them, and they acquit the innocent one, and condemn the guilty one, and it shall be, if the guilty one has incurred the penalty of lashes, that the judge shall make him lean over and flog him in front of him, commensurate with his crime in number. He shall flog him with 40 lashes. He shall not exceed, lest he give him a much further severe flogging than those 40 lashes, and your brother will be degraded before your eyes. You shall not muzzle an ox when it is threshing the grain. If brothers reside together, and one of them dies having no son, the dead man's wife shall not marry an outsider. Her husband's brother shall be intimate with her, making her a wife for himself, thus performing the obligation of a husband's brother with her. And it will be that the oldest brother who performs the levirate marriage, if she can bear, will succeed in the name of his deceased brother, so that his deceased brother's name shall not be obliterated from Israel. But if the man does not wish to take his brother's wife, the brother's wife shall go up to the gate to the elders and say, My husband's brother has refused to perpetuate his brother's name in Israel. He does not wish to perform the obligations of a husband's brother with me. Then the elders of his city shall call him and speak to him, and he shall stand up and say, I do not wish to take her. Then the brother's wife shall approach him before the eyes of the elders, and remove his shoe from his foot, and she shall spit before his face and answer him and say, Thus shall be done to the man who will not build up his brother's household. And that man shall be called in Israel the family of the one whose shoe was removed. If two men, a man and his brother, are fighting together, and the wife of one of them approaches to rescue her husband from his assailant, and she stretches forth her hand and grabs hold of his private parts, you shall cut off her hand. You shall not have pity. You shall not keep in your pouch 2 different weights, one large and one small. You shall not keep in your house 2 different ephah measures, one large and one small. Rather, you should have a full and honest weight and a full and honest ephah measure, in order that your days will be prolonged on the land which Elohim your God gives you. For whoever does these things, whoever perpetuates such injustice, is an abomination to Elohim your God. You shall remember what Amalek did to you on the way when you went out of Egypt, how he happened upon you on the way and cut off all the stragglers at your rear, when you were faint and weary and did not fear God, fear Elohim. Therefore will be when Elohim your God grants you respite from all your enemies around you in the land which Elohim your God gives to you as an inheritance to possess, that you shall obliterate the remembrance of Amalek from beneath the heavens. You shall not forget. Kesetra Yavi Vibaga Yogehe número 13. Kata Upanishad, chapter 3. 2 there are who dwell within the body, in the buddhi, the supreme akasha for the heart, enjoying the sure rewards of their own actions. The knowers of Brahman describe them as light and shade, as do those householders who have offered oblations in the 5 fires, and also those who have thrice performed the Nachiketa offering. We know how to perform the Nachiketa offering, which is the bridge for offerers, and we know also that supreme imperishable Brahman, which is sought by those who wish to cross over to the shore where there is no fear. Know the Atman to be the master of the chariot, the body, the chariot, the booty, the charioteer, and the mind, the reins. The senses, they say, are the horses, the objects, the roads. The wise call the Atman, united with the body, the senses, and the mind, the enjoyer. If the booty, being related to a mind that is always distracted, loses discrimination, then the senses become uncontrolled like the vicious horses of a charioteer. But if the booty, being related to a mind that is always restrained, possesses discrimination, then the senses come under control like the benevolent horses of a charioteer. If the booty, being related to a distracted mind, loses discrimination and therefore always remains impure, then the embodied soul never attains the goal, but enters into the round of births. But if the booty, being related to a mind that is restrained, possesses discrimination and therefore always remains pure, then the embodied soul attains that goal from which the soul is not born again. A man who has discrimination for his charioteer and holds the reins of the mind firmly reaches the end of the road, and that is the supreme position of Vishnu. Beyond the senses are the objects, beyond the objects is the mind, beyond the mind is the intellect, beyond the intellect the great Atman, beyond the great Atman the unmanifest, beyond the unmanifest the Purusha, beyond the Purusha there is nothing. This is the end, the supreme goal. That self hidden all beings does not shine forth, but it is seen by subtle seers through their one-pointed and subtle intellects. The wise man should merge his speech in his mind, and his mind in his intellect. He should merge his intellect in the cosmic mind, and the cosmic mind in the tranquil self. Arise, awake, approach the great and learn. Like the sharp edge of a razor that is that path, so the wise say, hard to tread and difficult to cross. Having realized Atman, which is soundless, intangible, formless, undecaying, and likewise tasteless, eternal and odorless, having realized that which is without beginning and end, beyond the great and unchanging one, is free from the jaws of death. The wise man who has heard and related the eternal story of Nachiketa, told by death, is adored in the world of Brahman, and he who, practicing self-control, recites the supreme secret in an assembly of Brahmins or at a Shraddha ceremony, obtains thereby infinite rewards. Yea, he obtains infinite rewards. Ki Teitzei Yavi Bhaga Yogahe, numero 13. Arjuna says, Prakriti and Purusha, the field and the knower of the field, knowledge and that which is to be known, all this, O Kesava, I desire to learn. Sri Krishna says, this body of Sanakuti is called the field, and he who knows it is called the knower of the field by those who describe them. And know that I am the knower in all fields, O Bharata, and only the knowledge of the field and its knower do I regard as true knowledge. Hear briefly from me what the field is, what its nature is, what its modifications are, whence it comes, who its knower is, and what Brahman's powers are. All this has been sung by sages in many different ways, in various distinctive hymns, and also in the well-reasoned and convincing passages indicative of Brahman. The great elements, consciousness, understanding, and the unmanifested, the 10 stories of the mind, the 5 objects of the senses, desire, hatred, pleasure, pain, the aggregate, intelligence, and fortitude. This briefly stated is the field together with its modifications. Humility, modesty, nonviolence, forbearance, and uprightness, service to the teacher, purity, steadfastness, and self-control, dispassion toward the sense objects, absence of ego, perception of the evil of birth, death, old age, sickness, and pain, non-attachment, non-identification of self with children, wife, home, and the rest, unvarying evenness of mind in the midst of agreeable and disagreeable events. Unswerving devotion to me through constant meditation on separation, resorting to solitude, aversion to the society of men, constancy in the knowledge of the self, and an insight into the object of the knowledge of truth. This is a dedication to be knowledge. This is declared to be knowledge, and all that is contrary to it is ignorance. I will now describe that which ought to be known, through the knowing of which one attains eternal life. It is the supreme Brahman, that which is without beginning, and is said to be neither being nor non-being. Its hands and feet are everywhere, its eyes, heads, and faces are everywhere, its ears are everywhere, its existence envelops all. It shines through the function of all the senses, and yet it is devoid of senses. It is unattached, and yet it sustains all. It is devoid of gunas, and it enjoys them. It is without and within all beings. It is unmoving and also moving. It is incomprehensible because it is subtle. It is distant away, and yet it is near. It is indivisible, and yet it is, as it were, divided amongst beings. That noble Brahman is the sustainer of all beings, and also their devourer and generator. The light even upon lights is said to be beyond darkness, as knowledge, the object of knowledge, and the goal of knowledge. It is set firm in the hearts of all. Thus briefly have been set forth the parable and also knowledge of the object of knowledge. My devotee who understands this becomes worthy of my state. Know that Prakriti and Purusha are both without beginning, and know too that all forms of gunas are born of Prakriti. Prakriti is said to be the cause of the generation of the body and the organs, and Purusha is said to be the cause of the experience of pleasure and pain. Purusha, embodied in Prakriti, experiences the gunas born of Prakriti. It is established to these gunas that is because of Brahman's birth in benevolence and evil wombs. The Supreme Spirit in the body is said to be the one who is the witness and the approver, the supporter and the enjoyer, and who is the sovereign Lord and the highest self. He who thus knows Purusha and Prakriti along with the gunas is not born again, howsoever he may comport himself. Some by meditation perceive the self in themselves through the mind, some by devotion to knowledge, and some by devotion to work. And there are yet some who do not know it by these means. They hear of it from others and worship. They too pass beyond death through their devotion to what they have heard. Whatever is born, whether animate or inanimate, know, Bharata Prince, that it is through the union of the field and the knower of the field. He who sees the Supreme Master abiding alike in all beings, and not perishing when they perish, verily he alone sees. Because he is the Master present alike everywhere, he does not injure self by self, and thus he reaches the Supreme State. He who sees that all actions are done only by Prakriti, and that the self is actionless, verily he alone sees. When he sees that the manifold nature of beings is centered in the one, and that all evolution is from that one alone, he becomes one with Brahman. Having no beginning and possessing no gunas, the supreme and imperishable self of Sanakuti neither acts nor is stained by action, even whilst dwelling in the body. As the akasha that pervades all things is not strained because of its subtlety, even so the self dwelling in the body everywhere is not stained. As the one Soleil illuminates the whole world, so does Brahman, who dwells in the body of Bharata, illumine the whole body. They who perceive with the eye of wisdom there's a distinction between field and knower of the field, and also the deliverance from Prakriti, the cause of all beings, they attain the Supreme. Doctrine of the Mean, Part 1. What heaven has conferred is called the nature. In accordance with this nature is called the path of duty. The regulation of this path is called instruction. The path may not be left for an instant. If it could be left, it would not be the path. On this account, the superior man does not wait till he sees things to be cautious, nor till he hears things to be apprehensive. There is nothing further visible than what is secret, and nothing further manifest than what is minute. Therefore, the superior man is watchful over himself when he is alone. Whilst there are no stirrings of pleasure, anger, sorrow, or joy, the mind may be said to be in the state of equilibrium. When those feelings have been stirred and they act in their due degrees, there ensues what may be called the state of harmony. This equilibrium is the great root from which grow all the human actings in the world, and this harmony is the universal path which they all should pursue. Let the states of equilibrium and harmony exist in perfection, and a happy order will prevail throughout heaven and earth, and all things will be nourished and flourish. Chung Ni says, a superior man embodies the course of the mean. The mean man acts contrary to the course of the mean. The superior man's embodying the course of the mean is because he is a superior man, and so also maintains the mean. The mean man's acting contrary to the course of the mean is because he is a mean man and has no caution. The Master says, perfect is the virtue which is according to the mean. Rare have they long been amongst the people who could practice it. The Master says, I know how it is that the path of the mean is not walked in. The knowing go beyond it, and the stupid do not come up to it. I know how it is the path of the mean. I know how it is that the path of the mean is not understood. The men of talents and virtue go beyond it, and the worthless do not come up to it. There is nobody but eats and drinks, but they are few who can distinguish flavors. The Master says, alas, how is the path of the mean untrodden? The Master says, there was Shun. He indeed was greatly wise. Shun loved to question others and to study their words, though they might be shallow. He concealed what was bad in them and displayed what was benevolent. He took hold of their two extremes, determined the mean, and employed it in his governance of the people. It was by this that he was Shun. The Master says, men all say we are wise, but being driven forward and taken in a net, a trap, or a pitfall, they do not know how to escape. Men all say we are wise, but happening to choose the course of the mean, they are not able to keep it for a round month. The Master says, this was the manner of he made a choice of the mean, and whenever he got hold of what was benevolent, he clasped it firmly, as if wearing it on his breast, and did not lose it. The Master says, the kingdom, its states, and its families may be perfectly ruled, dignitaries and emoluments may be declined, naked weapons may be trampled under the feet, but the course of the mean cannot be attained to. Zilla asks about energy. The Master says, do you mean the energy of the south, the energy of the north, or the energy which you should cultivate yourself? To show forbearance and gentleness in teaching others, and not to revenge unreasonable conduct, this is the energy of the southern region, and the benevolent man makes it his study. To lie under arms and to meet death without regret, this is the energy of northern regions, and the forceful make it their study. Therefore the superior man cultivates a friendly harmony without being weak. How firm is he in his energy? He stands erect in the middle without inclining to either side. How firm is he in his energy? When good benevolent principles prevail in the government of his country, he does not change from what he was in retirement. How firm is he in his energy? When bad principles prevail in the country, he maintains his course to death without changing. How firm is he in his energy? The Master says, to live in obscurity and yet practice wonders in order to be mentioned with honor in future ages, this is what I do not do. The benevolent man tries to proceed according to the right path, but when he has gone halfway, he abandons it. I am not able to stop. I am not able so to stop. The superior man acts with the course of the mean, though he may be all unknown, unregarded by the world. He feels no regret. It is only the sage who is able for this. The way which the superior man pursues reaches distant and wide, and yet is secret. Common men and women, however ignorant, may intermeddle with the knowledge of it, yet in its utmost reaches there is that which even the sage does not know. Common men and women, however, much below the ordinary standard of character, can carry it into practice. Yet in its utmost reaches, there is that which even the sage is not able to carry into practice. Great as heaven and earth are, men still find some things in them with which to be dissatisfied, such as that were the superior man to speak of his way in all its greatness, nothing in the world would be found able to embrace it, and were he to speak of it in its minuteness, nothing in the world would be found able to split it. It is said in the book of poetry, the hawk flies up to heaven, the fishes leap in the deep. This expresses how this way is seen above and below. The way of the superior man may be found in its simple elements, the intercourse of common men and women, but in its utmost reaches it shines brightly through heaven and earth. The Master says, the path is not distant from man. When men try to pursue a course which is distant from the common indications of consciousness, this course cannot be considered the path. In the book of poetry it is said, in hewing an axe handle, the pattern is not distantly off. If we grasp one axe handle to hew the other, and yet if we lose askance from the one to the other, we may consider them as apart. Therefore the superior man governs men according to their nature, with what is proper to them, and as soon as they change what is wrong, he stops. When one cultivates to the utmost the principles of his nature, and exercises them on the principle of reciprocity, he is not distant from the path. What you do not like when done to yourself, do not do to others. In that way of the supreme man, there are 4 things to not one of which have I ascertained to serve my far as I would require my son to serve me. To this I have not attained, to serve my prince as I would require my minister to serve me. To this I have not attained, to serve my elder brother as I would require my younger brother to serve me. To this I have not attained, to set the example in behaving to a friend as I would require him to behave to me. To this I have not attained. Earnest in practicing the ordinary virtues, the careful in speaking about them. If in his practice he has nothing defective, the superior man dares not but exert himself. And if in his words he has any excess, he dares not allow himself such license. Thus his words have respect to his actions, and his actions have respect to his words. Is it not just an entire sincerity which marks the superior man? The superior man does what is proper to the station in which he is. He does not desire to go beyond this. In a position of wealth and honor, he does what is proper to a position of wealth and honor. In a poor and low position, he does what is proper to a poor and low position. Situated amongst barbarous tribes, he does what is proper to a situation amongst barbarous tribes. In a position of sorrow and difficulty, he does what is proper to a position of sorrow and difficulty. The superior man can find himself in no situation in which he is not himself. In a high situation, he does not retreat with contempt his inferiors. In a low situation, he does not count the favor of his superiors. He rectifies himself and seeks for nothing from others, so that he has no dissatisfactions. He does not murmur against heaven, nor grumble against men. Thus it is that the superior man is quiet and calm, waiting for the appointments of heaven, whilst the mean man walks in dangerous paths, looking for lucky occurrences. The Master says, in archery we have something like the way of the superior man. When the archer misses the center of the mark, he turns around and seeks for the cause of his failure in himself. The way of the superior man may be compared to what takes place in traveling. When to go to a distance, we must first traverse the space that is near, and in ascending a height, we must then begin from lower ground. It is said in the book of poetry, happy union with wife and children is like the music of lutes and harps. When there is concord amongst brethren, the harmful is delightful and enduring. Thus may you regulate your family and enjoy the pleasure of your wife and children. The Master says, in such a state of things, parents have entire complacence. The Master says, how abundantly do spiritual beings display the powers that belong to them. We look for them, but do not see them. We listen to, but do not hear them. Yet they have yet they enter into all things, and there is nothing without them. They cause all the people in the kingdom to fast and purify themselves and array themselves in their richest dresses in order to attend at their sacrifices. Then, like overflowing water, they seem to be overheard. They seem to be over the heads and on the right and left of their worshippers. It is said in the book of poetry, the approaches of the spirits you cannot sunrise, and you cannot treat them with indifference. Such is the manifestations of what is minute, such is the possibility of repressing the outgoings of sincerity. The master says, how greatly filial was Shun. His virtue was that of a sage, his dignity was the throne, his riches were all within the four seas. He offered his offerings to his ancestral temple, and his descendants preserved the offerings to himself. Therefore, having such great virtue, it could not be but that he should obtain the throne, that he should obtain those riches, that he should obtain his fame, and that he should attain to his lowly strife, that he should attain to his long life. Digha Nikaya. Sangiti Sutta 33, Chapter 1. Thus have I heard. The Exalted One was once making a tour in the country of the Mallas, accompanied by a great company of the brethren, numbering about 500. And he arrived at Pava, the Malla capital. There he resided in the mango grove of Kunda the smith. Now at that time a new moat hall of the Pava Mallas named Upataka had not long been built, and had not been occupied by a recluse or Brahmin or any human being whatever. And the Pava Mallas heard that the Exalted One on his tour had arrived with his following at Pava and was staying in Kunda's mango grove. And they went to visit him, and saluting him sat down at one side. So seated they said to him, Master, a new moat hall named Ubataka has lately been built by us Mallas at Pava. And no recluse or Brahmin or any human being whatever has yet occupied it. Let Master the Exalted One be the first to make utilization of it. That it has been first utilized by the Exalted One will be for the lasting benefit and happiness of the Pava Mallas. The Exalted One by his silence assented. When they marked his assent, they rose and saluted him, passing round by his right, and went to the moat hall. They spread the whole hall with carpets, arranged seats, put a bowl of water ready, hung up an oil lamp, and returned to the Exalted One. Saluting him and standing at one side, they said, the whole moat hall, Master, is spread with carpets, seats are arranged, a bowl of water has been placed ready, a lamp is hung up. And now, Master, whenever the Exalted One deems the time is fit. Then the Exalted One dressed himself, and taking bowl and robe, he went with the company of the brethren to the moat hall. On arriving, he bathed his feet and entered the hall, and took his seat facing the east, leaning against the central pillar. Then the brethren also bathed their feet and entered the hall, ranging themselves against the western wall, facing east, behind the Exalted One. The Pava Mallas also bathed their feet and entered the hall, ranging themselves against the eastern wall and facing the west, with the Exalted One before them. Then the Exalted One, distant into the night, discoursed on the doctrine to the Pava Mallas, instructing, enlightening, inciting, and inspiring them. And then he dismissed them, saying, Lovely Vasetas is the night. Do you deem it time? We do, Master, responded the Pava Mallas. And rising, they saluted the Exalted One by the right and departed. And presently the Exalted One, surveying the company of brethren, wrapped in silence wherever they sat along, called to the Venerable Sariputta. There is an absent Sariputta of sloth and torpor in the company of brethren. Let a religious discourse occur to thee. My back is aching, I will stretch it. So be it, Master, replied Sariputta. Then the Exalted One, letting his robe be folded in four, took up the lion posture on his right side, placing his feet one in the curve of the other, mindful and deliberate, having mentally noted a time for arousing himself. Now at that time the Nagata Nata's son had just died at Pava. After his death, the Nagatas became divided, falling into opposite parties and into strife. Disputes broke out, and they went on, wounding each other with wordy weapons. Thou dost not confess this Dharma and discipline. I do confess it. Wilt thou confess it? Thou art in the wrong, I am preaching it rightly, I am speaking to the point, you are off the point. Thou sayest what should be said first, and what should be come last. What thou hast so long excogitated is quite upset. Thy challenge is taken up, thou art proved to be wrong, begone to get rid of thy opinion, or disentangle thyself if thou canst. Truly the Nagantas followers of the Nataputta wrought me things to kill. Even the lay disciples of the white robe who followed Nataputta showed themselves shocked, repelled, and indignant at the Nagantas. So badly was their doctrine and discipline set forth and imparted, so ineffectual was it for guidance, so little conducive to peace, imparted as it had been by one who was supremely enlightened, and now wrecked as it was of his support and without a protector. Then the Venerable Sariputta addressed the brethren, the Nagata, the Nataputta friends, as the Nagata Nataputta friends has just died of Pava. Since his death, the Nagantas have become divided and have fallen into opposite parties and into strife. Disputes have broken out, and they go on wounding each other with wordy weapons. So badly has their doctrine and discipline been set forth, and now wrecked of his support and without a protector. But to us friends, the Dharma has been well set forth and imparted by the Exalted One. It is effectual for guidance, conducive to self-mastery, and is imparted by one perfectly enlightened. Herein there should be a chanting by all in concord, not in a wrangling, that thus this holy life may persist and be long maintained. That may be for the welfare, the well-being and happiness of many folk, for compassion on the world, for the benefit, the well-being, the happiness of devas and of men. What is the single doctrine? All beings persist through causes. All beings persist through conditions. The single doctrine, friends, has been perfectly set forth by the Exalted One who knows, who sees. Hereon there should be a chanting in concord, not a wrangling, that thus this holy life may persist and be long maintained. That may be for the well-being and the happiness of many folk, for compassion on the world, for the benefit, the well-being, the happiness of devas and of men. There are double doctrines, friends, which are perfectly set forth by Exalted One who knows, who sees. Hereon there should be a chanting in concord for the benefit of devas and of men, which are the doubles: mind and body, ignorance and craving for rebirth, false opinion and as to A, rebirth, B, no rebirth, unconscientiousness and indiscretion, conscientiousness and discretion, contumacy and friendship with evil, suavity and friendship with benevolence, proficiency as to offenses and restoration from them, proficiency as to attainments and recovery from them, proficiency in elements and in understanding them, proficiency in the 12 spheres of sense and in the 12 factors of the causal formula, proficiency in assigning specific causes and in eliminating elements that are not causal in a special effect, rectitude and shamefacedness, patience and gentleness, mindness of speech and courtesy, kindness and love, absence of mind and want of intelligence, mindfulness and intelligence, unguardedness of faculties and intemperance in diet, guardedness of faculties and temperance in diet, the powers of judging and of cultivation, the powers of mindfulness and concentration, calm and insight, the causes of or signs of calm and of mental grasp and balance, attainment in conduct and in sound belief, failure in conduct and in sound belief, purity in conduct and in belief, purity in belief and the struggle according to the beliefs one holds, agitation over agitating conditions and the systemic exertion of one thus agitated, discontent in meritorious acts and perseverance in exertion, the higher wisdom and emancipation. These friends are the double doctrines perfectly set forth by the Exalted One who knows, who sees. Hereon there should be a chanting by all in concord, not a wrangling, that thus this holy life may persist and be long maintained. That may be for the well-being and happiness of many folk, for compassion on the world, for the benefit, the well-being, the happiness of devas and of men. There are triple doctrines perfectly set forth by the Exalted One who knows, who sees. Hereon there should be a chanting in concord by all, not a wrangling, which are these bad roots or conditions: greed, hatred, delusion; these benevolent roots: disinterestedness, love, intelligence; 3 kinds of evil conduct, to wit, in act, word, and thought. 3 kinds of fine conduct, to wit, in act, word, and thought. 3 kinds of bad thoughts, to wit, thoughts of sense desire, enmity, of cruelty. 3 kinds of benevolent thoughts, to wit, thoughts of renunciation, of amity, of kindness. 3 kinds of bad purposes. 3 kinds of benevolent purposes. 3 kinds of bad notions. 3 kinds of benevolent notions. 3 bad elements, to wit, of sense desire, enmity, cruelty. 3 benevolent elements. Other 3 elements, to wit, the sphere of sense desire, that of the Brahman world, that of the higher heavens. Other 3 elements, to wit, the sphere of the Brahman world, that of the higher heavens, that of cessation. Other 3 elements, to wit, low, medium, and sublime spheres. 3 directions of craving, to wit, craving for the pleasure of this life, craving for life to come, craving for life to end. Other 3 directions of craving, to wit, craving for life in the sphere of sense, for life in the Brahma Rupa world, for the life in the higher worlds. Other 3 directions of craving, craving for life in the lower spheres, for life in the higher spheres, for cessation. 3 fetters, to wit, the false opinion concerning individuality, doubt, inverted judgment as to rule and ritual. 3 intoxicants, to wit, the poisons of sensuality, future life, and ignorance. 3 places of rebirths, to wit, the universe of sense desire, that of the lower and that of the higher worlds. 3 quests, that of sensuous enjoyment, that of life renewed, that of problems connected with the religious life. 3 forms of conceit, to wit, 1. I am better than. 2. I am equal to. 3. I am worse than. The 3 periods, to wit, past, future, present. 3 limits, to wit, individuality, its rising and cessation. 3 modes of feelings, to wit, pleasant, painful, and neutral feeling. 3 states of suffering, to wit, painful condition, existence, change. 3 heaps, to wit, that of wrongdoing entailing immutable evil results, that of well-doing entailing immutable benevolent results, and that of everything not so determined. 3 doubts, to wit, doubts, perplexity, inability to decide, dissatisfaction concerning past, future, and present. 3 kinds which a Buddha has not a regard against. A Buddha, friends, is pure in conduct, whether or of act or speech or thought. There is no misdeed or of any kind concerning which he must take benevolent care lest another should come to know of it. 3 obstacles, to wit, lust, hate, illusion. 3 fires, to wit, lust, hate, illusion. Other 3 fires, to wit, the fire of the worshipful, the fire of the head of the household, the fire of those worthy of offerings. 3 full classification of matter, to wit, as visible and resisting, as visible and resisting, as invisible and unresisting. 3 acclamations, to wit, complexes of merit, of demerit, of fluctuate decisions. To wit, complexes of merit, of demerit, of influctuate results. 3 kinds of persons, to wit, the learner, the adept, he who is neither. 3 kinds of seniors, to wit, an aged layman, an eminent bhikshu, a bhikshu officially ranked as senior. 3 bases by merit accomplished, to wit, the bases composed of giving, of virtue, of study. 3 bases for reproof, to wit, that which has been seen, that which has been heard, that which one suspects. 3 uprisings of desires connected with sense. There are beings, friends, whose sense desires are bound up with the objects thereof, and they are in subjection to such desires. Such are the human beings, some devas and some reborn to one of the 4 evil destinies. There are beings who have desires for that which they have creates. Such are the devas so-called Nimanarati, who having created one thing after another are in subjection to such desires. There are beings who have desires for the creations of others and get these into their power. Such are the devas so-called Parinamita Vasavati, 3 happy rebirths. There are beings, friends, who are in a former birth, having continually produced, dwelled now in happiness. Such are the devas of the Brahma group. There are beings who are soaked and steeped in happiness, full of it, pervaded by it. They from time to time pour forth ecstatic utterance, saying, "Oh, the bliss of it! Ah, what happiness!" Such are the radiant devas. There are beings who are similarly filled with happiness, pervaded by it. They, serenely blissful, experience only sublime happiness. Such are the luminous devas. 3 kinds of knowledge: that of the learner, that of the adept, that of him who is neither. Other 3 kinds of knowledge: knowledge that is thought out, knowledge that is learned from another, knowledge that is gained by cultural development. 3 kinds of armor: that of doctrine learnt, that of a detachment, that of knowledge. 3 faculties: that of coming to know, coming to the unknown, that of knowing, that of perfected knowledge. 3 kinds of vision, to wit, the eye of flesh, the heavenly eye, the eye of insight. 3 courses of training, to wit, the higher virtue, the higher mental training, the higher spirit, the higher insight. 3 branches of culture, to wit, the culture of sense apprehension, of mind, of insight. 3 supreme things, to wit, that of vision, that of procedure, that of freedom. 3 species of concentration: that of mental application followed by sustained thought, that of sustained thought without mental application, that of concentration without either. Other 3 species of concentration: concentrative insight into emptiness, signlessness, and of baneful longing. 3 purities, to wit, of action, speech, and thought. 3 factors of the anchorite, to wit, a certain attitude respecting conduct, respecting speech, respecting thought. 3 proficiencies, to wit, proficiency as to progress, regress, and the means of success. 3 intoxications, to wit, the pride of health, the pride of youth, the pride of life. 3 dominant influences on effort, to wit, the influence of self-criticism, the influence of the community, the influence of spiritual things. 3 bases of discourse, to wit, 1. Discourse may be concerned with the past, such things were in the past. 2. Discourse may be concerned with the future, so will it be in time to come. Or 3. With the day present, so has it come to pass at the present day. 3 branches of wisdom, to wit, knowledge of one's former lives, knowledge of the decease and birth of beings, knowledge in the destruction of the intoxicants. 3 states, to wit, Deva consciousness, the divine states, the Aryan state. 3 wonders, to wit, the wonder of mystic power, the wonder of manifestation, the wonder of education. These, friends, are the triple doctrines perfectly set forth by the Exalted One who knows, who sees. Hereon there should be a changing by all concord, not a wrangling, thus that this holy life may persist and be long ere maintained. That may be for the well-being and happiness of many folk, for compassion on the world, for the benevolent, the welfare, the happiness of devas and of men. 4 full doctrines, friends, have been perfectly set forth by the Exalted One who knows, who sees, the Arahant Buddha Supreme. Here should be a chanting and concord by all, not a wrangling, for the happiness of devas and of men. Which are these? 4 applications of mindfulness, to wit, herein, friends, let a brother as to the body, as to feelings, as to thoughts, as to ideas, continue to look on these severally and in order, that he remains ardent, self-possessed, and mindful, overcoming both the hankering and the dejection common in the world. 4 supreme efforts, to wit, herein, friends, a brother, in order that unrisen wrong and wicked ideas may not arise, in order that wrong and wicked ideas, if arisen, may be put away, in order that unrisen benevolent ideas may arise, in order that benevolent ideas, if arisen, may persist, may be clarified, multiplied, expanded, developed, perfected, generates will, endeavors, stirs up energy, makes firm his mind, struggles. Herein, friends, a brother develops the stage which is characterized by 1. The mental coefficient of an effort of purposive concentration, by the mental coefficient of an effort of intellectual concentration, by the mental coefficient of an effort of energized concentration, by the mental coefficient of an effort of investigating concentration. Herein, friends, a brother, aloof from sensuous appetites, aloof from evil ideas, enters into and abides in the first jhana, wherein there is initiative and sustained thought, which is born of solitude and is full of zest and ease. Secondly, when suppressing initiative and sustained thought, he enters into and abides in the second jhana, which is self-evoked, born of concentration, full of zest and ease. In that, set free from initial and sustained thought, the mind grows calm and sure, dwelling on high. Thirdly, when a brother, no longer fired with zest, abides calmly contemplative, whilst mindful and self-possessed, he feels in his body that ease whereof Aryans declare, he that is calmly contemplative and aware, he that Herein, friends, a brother aloof from sensuous appetites, aloof from evil ideas, enters into and abides in the first jhana, wherein there is initiative and sustained thought, which is born of solitude and is full of zest and ease. Secondly, when suppressing initiative and sustained thought, he enters into and abides in the second jhana, which is self-evoked, born of concentration, full of zest and ease. In that, set free from initial and sustained thought, the mind grows calm and sure, dwelling on high. Thirdly, when a brother no longer fired with zest abides calmly contemplative, whilst mindful and self-possessed, he feels in his body that ease whereof Aryans declare, he that is calmly contemplative and aware, he dwelleth at ease, so does he enter into and abide in the third jhana. Fourthly, by putting aside ease and by putting aside malaise, by the passing away of the joy and the sorrow he used to feel, he enters into and abides in the fourth jhana, rapture of utter purity of mindfulness and equanimity, wherein neither ease is felt nor any ill, for developments of concentration, to wit, that which, when practiced and expanded, conduces to pleasure in this life, acquisition of intuition and insight, mindfulness of well-awareness, destruction of spiritual intoxicants, which are these severally. Uno is the fourfold jhana. Dos is when a brother attends to the sensation of light, sustains the perception of daylight, and attends to light no less in the nighttime, and thus with open and unmuffled consciousness creates a radiant luminous mind. Tres is the understanding of each feeling or perception of or thought as they severally arise, remain present, and vanish. Cuatro is the keeping watch over the five aggregates of grasping as they rise and cease. This is material, this is the appearance of something material, this is the vanishing, and so on. For infinitudes, to wit, herein, brethren, a brother lets his mind pervade one quarter of the world with thoughts of love, pity, sympathy, and joy, equanimity, and so the second quarter, and so the third, and so the fourth. And thus the whole wide world, above, below, around, and everywhere does he continue to pervade with heart, distant reaching, grown great and beyond measure, free from anger and ill will. 4 jhanas of rupa consciousness, to wit, herein, brethren, a brother, by passing beyond the consciousness of matter, by the dying out of the cessation of resistance, by paying no heed to the idea of difference, as the thought, if space is infinite, attains to and abides in the conceptual sphere of space as infinite. Having wholly transcended this, as the thought infinite is consciousness, he attains to and abides in the conceptual sphere of consciousness as infinite. Having wholly transcended this, as the thought it is nothing, he attains to and abides in the conceptual sphere of nothingness. Having wholly transcended this, he attains to and abides in the sphere of neither consciousness nor unconsciousness. 4 bases of conduct. Herein, brethren, a brother judges that a certain thing is to be habitually pursued, another thing is to be endured, another to be avoided, another to be suppressed. 4 Aryan lineages. Herein, brethren, a brother is content with whatever robes he may have, command contentment of this kind, and does not try to gain robes in improper, unsuitable ways. He is not dismayed if he gain no robe, but when he has gained one, he is not greedy, nor infatuated, nor overwhelmed. He wears it heedful, lest he incur evil, and understanding its object. Finally, by this contentment as to any garment, he neither is puffed up nor disparages others. Now he that is expert, not slothful, heedful, mindful, is called brethren, a brother who is true to the ancient distinguished lineage of the Aryans. The same is he who is similarly content with his alms and with his lodging. Lastly, brethren, the brother who, having the love both of eliminating on the one hand and of developing on the other, loves both to eliminate and to develop, and loving both, neither is puffed up nor disparages others. He that is herein expert, not slothful, heedful, mindful, is called a brother who is true to the ancient distinguished lineage of the Aryans. 4 exertions, to wit, self-control, eliminating, developing, safeguarding. What is the first? Herein, brethren, when a brother sees an object with the eye and is not entranced by the general appearance or the details of it, but sets himself to restrain that which might give occasion for bad wicked states, covetousness, dejection to flow in over him, were he to dwell unrestrained as to the faculty of sight, and to keep watch over that faculty, and attains to master over it, and similarly as to other 4 senses of mind, such an effort is called exertion in self-control. What is exertion in elimination? Herein, brethren, a brother, when a sensual, malign, or cruel thought has arisen, will not endure it, but puts it away, suppresses, exterminates it, and makes it non-existent. Such an exertion is called exertion in elimination. What is exertion in developing? Herein, brethren, a brother cultivates each of the 7 factors of enlightenment, which are based upon detachment, upon passionlessness, upon cessation, and wherein is maturity and self-surrender. This is called exertion in development. What is exertion in safeguarding? Herein, brethren, a brother keeps pure and genuine as an auspicious object of concentrated imagination when it has arisen, such as one of the contemplations of foul things. This is called exertion in safeguarding. 4 knowledges, to wit, knowledge of the doctrine, knowledge in its corollaries, knowledge of what is in another's consciousness, and popular knowledge. Other 4 knowledges, to wit, knowledge regarding suffering, genesis, cessation, path, 4 factors in stream attainment, to wit, intercourse with the benevolent, hearing the benevolent doctrine, systemized attention, practicing those things that leap up to the doctrine and its corollaries. 4 factors of his state who has attained the stream. Herein, brethren, the Aryan disciple has an unshakable faith in the Buddha. So he too, the Exalted One, is Arahant, supremely enlightened, full of wisdom and benevolence, blessed one, world knower, peerless driver, and tamer of men, teachers of devas and men. Buddha, Exalted One, in the Dharma. Well proclaimed by the Exalted One is the Dharma effectively in this life and without delay, bidding us and seeing, come and see, leading us onward to be known by the wise as a personal experience. In the Sangha, well practices the Sangha of the Exalted One's disciples in uprightness, method, and propriety, namely the 4 pairs of persons, the 8 classes of individuals. This is the order of the Exalted One's disciples to whom offerings and ministering should be made, and gifts and reverent greeting as unto the supreme field of merit throughout the world. Endowed is it with virtues lovely to the Aryans, unbroken and flawless, consistently practiced, unblemished, making men free, commended by the wise, unperverted, and conducing to rapt concentration. 4 fruits of the life of a recluse, to wit, the fruit of the 4-fold path, stream attainment, of the once returner, of the never returner, of arahantship. 4 elements, to wit, the extended or earthly, the cohesive or watery, the hot or fiery, the mobile or aerial element, 4 supports or foods, to wit, solid bodily food, whether gross or a subtle, contact as the second, motive or purpose as 3rd, consciousness and rebirth as 4th. 4 stations of consciousness. Brethren, when consciousness gaining at a foothold persists, it is either in connection with material qualities or with a coefficient of feeling or perception of volitional complexes. In connection with any of these, as an instrument, as an object of thought, as a platform, as a set of enjoyment, it attains to growth, increase, abundance. 4 ways of going astray, to it, through partiality, hate, illusion, fear. 4 uprisings of craving. Brethren, craving arises in a brother because of raiment, alms, hot lodging, and dainty foods. 4 rates of progress, to it, when progress is difficult and intuition slow. When progress is difficult but intuition comes swiftly, when progress is easy but intuition is slow, and when progress is easy and intuition comes swiftly. Other 4 modes of progress, to wit, exercise without endurance, with taming of faculties, with calm. 4 divisions of doctrine, to wit, when the highest things are attained by an attitude of disinterestedness, or amity, or perfect mindfulness, or perfect concentration. 4 religious undertakings. One that brings present suffering and in the future painful consequences. Dos. One that brings present suffering and in the future happy consequences. Tres. One that brings present pleasure and in the future painful consequences. Cuatro. One that brings present happiness and in the future happy consequences. 4 bodies of doctrine, to wit, virtues, concentrative exercise, insight, emancipation. 4 powers, to wit, energy, mindfulness, concentration, insight. 4 resolves, to wit, to gain insight, to win truth, to surrender all evil, to manifest, to master self. 4 modes of answering questions, to wit, the categorical reply, the discriminating reply, the counter-question reply, the waived question. 4 kinds of action, to wit, that which is dark with dark result, that which is bright with bright result, mixed with mixed result, that which is neither with neither kind of result and conduces to the destruction of karma action. 4 matters to be actualized, to wit, 4 more lives to be actualized by clear mentality, decease and rebirth, to be recognized by the heavenly eye, the 8 deliverances, to be recognized by all the mental factors, destruction of intoxicants, to be recognized by insight, 4 floods, to wit, sensual desire, life, renewed error, ignorance, 4 bonds, to wit, sensual desires, life, renewed error, ignorance, 4 bond loosenings, to wit, from sensual desires, from life renewed, error, ignorance, 4 knots, to wit, the body knots of covetousness, of malevolence, of inverted judgment as torula and ritual, and of the inclination to dogmatize, 4 graspings, to wit, the laying hold of sensual desires, of error, of rules and rights, of the soul theory, 4 matrices, to wit, the matrix of birth by an egg, the viviparous matrix, the matrix of moist places, and the rebirth as deva, 4 classes of conception at birth. Herein, brethren, one person descends into the more's womb, unknowing, abides there, unknowing, departs thence unknowing. That is the first class of conception. Next, another person descends deliberately, but abides and departs unknown. Next, another person descends and abides deliberately, but departs unknowing. Lastly, another person descends, abides, and departs deliberately. 4 methods of acquiring new personality, to wit, uno, in which our own volition works, not another's; dos, in which another's volition works, not ours; tres, in which both our own and another's volition work; cuatro, in which the volition of neither works. 4 modes of purity in offerings, to wit, uno, when a gift is purely made on the part of the giver, but not purely received; dos, when a gift is made pure by the recipient, not by the giver; tres, when the gift is made pure by both; cuatro, when the gift is made pure by neither. 4 grounds of popularity, to wit, liberality, kind speech, justice, and partiality. 4 unerring modes of speech, to wit, lying, slander, abuse, vain chatter. 4 Aryan modes of speech, to wit, abstinence from any of the preceding. Other 4 unerring modes of speech, to wit, declaring that to have been seen, heard, thought of, known, which has not been seen, not been heard, not thought of, not known. Other 4 Aryan modes of speech, to wit, declaring truthfully respecting the 4 preceding cases. Other 4 Aryan modes of speech, to wit, declaring that to have been unseen, unheard additionally, which is seen and heard additionally. Other 4 Aryan modes of speech, to wit, declaring that which has been seen to have been seen, and further. 4 classes of individuals. Herein, brethren, a certain individual who torments himself is devoted to self-affliction. Another torments others, is devoted to torturing self. Another torments both himself and others. Another torments neither himself nor others, nor is devoted to tormenting either. He thus abstaining lives his life void of longings, perfected, cool, in blissful enjoyment, his whole self ennobled. Herein, brethren, a certain person whose conduct makes for his own benefit, not for that of others; dos, others whose conduct makes for others' benefit, not his own; tres, another's conduct makes for neither; cuatro, another's conduct makes for both his own benefit and for that of others. Other 4 individuals, to wit, uno, living in darkness and bound for the dark; dos, living in darkness and bound for the light; cuatro, living in the field and light, bound for darkness; cuatro, living in the light, bound for the light. Other 4 individuals, to wit, the unshaken recluse, the blue lotus recluse, the white lotus recluse, the exquisite recluse. These 4-fold doctrines, friends, have been perfectly set forth by the Exalted One, who knows, who sees. Hereon there should be a changing by all in concord, not a wrangling, that thus this holy life may persist and be long maintained, that it may be for the well-being and happiness of many folk, for compassion on the world, for the benevolent, the welfare, the happiness of devas and of men. Dhammapada, the Niraya Vaga, número 22. The liar goes to the state of woe. Also he who, having done wrong, says, I did not do it. Men of base actions, both on departing, they share the same destiny in the other world. There are many evil characters and uncontrolled men wearing the saffron robe. These wicked men will be born in states of woe because of their evil deeds. It will be better to swallow a red-hot iron ball blazing like fire than as an unvirtuous and uncontrolled monk to eat the alms of the people. For misfortunes befall the reckless man who consorts with another's wife, acquisitioning of demerit, disturbed sleep, ill repute, and rebirth in states of woe. Such a man acquires demerit and an unhappy birth in the future. Brief is the pleasure of the frightened man and woman, and the king imposes heavy punishment. Hence, let not man consort with another's wife. Just as cushy grass wrongly handled cuts the hand, even so a recluse's life wrongly lived drags one to states of woe. Any loose act, any corrupt observance, any life of questionable celibacy, none of these bear much fruit. If anything is to be done, let one do it with sustained vigor. A lax monastic life stirs up the dust of passions all the further. An evil deed is better left undone, for such a deed torments one afterwards. But a benevolent deed is better done, doing which one repents not later. Just as a border city is closely guarded both within and without, even so guard yourself. Do not let slip this opportunity for spiritual growth, for those who let slip this opportunity grieve indeed when consigned to hell. Those who are ashamed of what they should not be ashamed of, and are not ashamed of what they should be ashamed of, upholding false views, they go to states of woe. Those who see something to fear where there is nothing to fear, and see nothing to fear when there is something to fear, upholding false views, they go to states of woe. Those who imagine evil where there is none, and do not see evil where it is, upholding false views, they go to states of woe. Those who discern the wrong as wrong and the right as right, upholding right views, they go to realms of bliss. Acts 13:15. Now in the church at Antioch there were prophets and teachers, Barnabas, Simeon, called Niger, Lucius of Cyrene, Manaen, who had been brought up with Herod the Tetrarch, and Saul. Whilst they were honoring the Master and fasting, the Holy Spirit said, Set apart for me Barnabas and Saul for the work to which I have called them. So after they had fasted and prayed, they placed their hands on them and sent them off. The two of them, sent on their way by the Holy Spirit, went down to Seleucia and sailed from there to Cyprus. When they arrived at Salamis, they proclaimed the word of Elohim in the Jewish brethren synagogues. John was with them as their helper. They traveled through the whole island until they came to Paphos. There they met a Jewish brethren sorcerer and false prophet named Bar-Jesus, who was an attendant of the proconsul Sergius Paulus. The proconsul, an intelligent man, sent for Barnabas and Saul because he wanted to hear the word of God. But Elymas the sorcerer, for that is what his name means, opposed them and tried to turn the proconsul from the faith. Then Saul, who was also called Paul, filled with the Holy Spirit, looked straight at Elymas and said, You are a child of the devil and an enemy of everything that is right. You are full of all kinds of deceit and trickery. Will you never stop perverting the right ways of the Master? Now the hand of the Master is against you. You are going to be blind for a time, not even able to see the light of the soleil. Immediately mist and darkness came over him, and he groped about, seeking someone to lead him by the hand. When the proconsul saw that what had happened, he believed, for he was amazed at the teaching about the Master. From Paphos, Paul and his companions sailed to Perga in Pamphylia, where John left them to return to Jerusalem. From Perga they went on to Pisidian Antioch. On Shabbat they entered the synagogue and sat down. After the reading from the law and the prophets, the leaders of the synagogue sent word to them, saying, Brothers, if you have a word of exhortation for the people, please speak. Standing up, Paul motioned with his hand and said, "Fellow Israelites, and you Gentiles who worship God, listen to me. The God of the people of Israel choose our ancestors. God made the people prosper during their stay in Egypt. With mighty power, God led them out of that country. For about 40 years, God endured their conduct in the wilderness, and God overthrew 7 nations in Canaan, giving their land to God's people as their inheritance. All this took about 450 years. After this, God gave them judges until the time of Samuel the prophet. Then the people asked for a king, and God gave them Saul, son of Kish, of the tribe of Benjamin, who ruled 40 years. After removing Saul, God made David their king. God testified concerning him, "I have found David, son of Jesse, a man after my own heart. He will do everything I want him to do." From this man's descendants, God has brought to Israel the Savior Jesus, as God promised. Before the coming of Jesus, John preached repentance and baptism to all the people of Israel. As John was completing his work, he said, "Who do you suppose I am? I am not the one you are looking for, but there is one coming after me whose sandals I am not worthy to untie." Fellow children of Abraham, and you God-fearing Gentiles, it is to us that this message of salvation has been sent. The people of Jerusalem and their rulers did not recognize Jesus, yet in condemning him they fulfilled the words of the prophets that are read every Shabbat. Though they found no proper ground for a death sentence, they asked Pilate to have him executed. When they had carried out all that was written about him, they took him down from the cross and laid him in a tomb. But God raised him from the dead, and for many days he was seen by those who had traveled with him from Galilee to Jerusalem. They are now his witnesses to our people. We tell you the benevolent news, what God promised our ancestors. God has fulfilled for us, their children, by raising up Jesus, as it is written in the 2nd Psalm, "You are my son, today I have become your creator." God raised him from the dead so that he will never be subject to decay, as God has said, "I will give you the holy and sure blessings promised to David." So it is also stated elsewhere, "You will not let your Holy One see decay." Now when David had served God's purpose in his own generation, he fell asleep and he was buried with his ancestors, and his body decayed. But the one whom God raised from the dead did not see decay. Therefore, my friends, I want you to know that through Jesus the forgiveness of sins is proclaimed to you. Through him, everyone who believes is set free from every sin, a justification you were not able to obtain under the law of Moshe. Take care that what the prophets have said does not happen to you. Look, you scoffers, wonder and perish, for I am going to do something in your days that you would never believe, even if someone told you. As Paul and Barnabas were leaving the synagogue, the people invited them to speak further about these things on the next Shabbat. When the congregation was dismissed, many of the Jewish brethren and devout converts to Judaism followed Paul and Barnabas, who talked with them and urged them to continue in the grace of God. On the next Shabbat, almost the whole city gathered to hear the word of the Master. When the Jewish brethren saw the crowds, they were filled with jealousy. They began to contradict what Paul was saying and heaped abuse on him. Then Paul and Barnabas answered them boldly, "We had to speak the word of God to you first. Since you reject it and do not consider yourselves worthy of eternal life, we now turn to the Gentiles, for this is what the Master has commanded us. I have made you a light for the Gentiles, that you may bring salvation to the ends of the earth." When the Gentiles heard this, they were glad and honored the word of the Master, and all who were appointed for eternal life believed. The word of the Master spread through the whole region, but the Jewish brethren leaders incited the God-fearing women of high standing and the leading men of the city. They stirred up persecution against Paul and Barnabas and expelled them from their region. So they shook the dust off their feet as a warning to them and went to Iconium. And the disciples were filled with joy and with the Holy Spirit. At Iconium, Paul and Barnabas went as usual to the Jewish brethren in synagogue. There they spoke so effectively that a great number of Jewish brethren and Greeks believed. But the Jewish brethren who refused to believe stirred up the other Gentiles and poisoned their minds against the brothers. So Paul and Barnabas spent considerable time there, speaking boldly for the Master, who confirmed the message of his grace by enabling them to perform signs and wonders. The people of the city were divided. Some sided with the Jewish brethren, others with the apostles. There was a plot afoot amongst both Gentiles and Jewish brethren, together with their leaders, to mistreat them and stone them. But they found out about it and fled to the Lycaonian cities of Lystra and Derbe, and to the surrounding country, where they continued to preach the gospel. In Lystra there sat a man who was lame. He had been that way from birth and had never walked. He listened to Paul, and as he was speaking, Paul looked directly at him, saw that he had faith to be healed, and called out, "Stand up on your feet." At that the man jumped up and began to walk. When the crowd saw what Paul had done, they shouted in the Lycaonian language, "The deities have come down to us in human form." Barnabas they called Zeus, and Paul they called Hermes, because he was the chief speaker. The priest of Zeus, whose temple was just outside the city, brought bulls and wreaths to the city gates, because he and the crowd wanted to offer offerings to them. When the apostles Barnabas and Paul heard of this, they tore their clothes and rushed out into the crowd, shouting, "Friends, why are you doing this? We too are only human, like you. We are bringing you benevolent news, telling you to turn from these worthless things to the living God, who made the heavens and the earth and the sea and everything in them. In the past, God let all nations go their own way, yet God has not left God's self without testimony. God has shown kindness by giving you rain from heaven and crops in their season. God provides you with plenty of food and fills your hearts with joy." Even with these words, they had difficulty keeping the crowd from offering to them. Then some Jewish brethren came from Antioch and Iconium and won the crowd over. They stoned Paul and dragged him outside the city, thinking he was dead. But after the disciples had gathered around him, he got up and went back into the city. The next day he and Barnabas left for Derbe. They preached the gospel in that city and won a large number of disciples. Then they returned to Lystra, Iconium, and Antioch, strengthening the disciples and encouraged them to remain true to the faith. "We must go through many hardships to enter the sovereignty of God," they said. Paul and Barnabas appointed elders for them in each church, and with prayer and fasting committed them to the Master, in whom they had put their trust. After going through Pisidia, they came into Pamphylia, and when they had reached the word in Perga, they went down to Attalia. From Attalia they sailed back to Antioch, where they had been committed to the grace of God for the work that they had now completed. On arriving there, they gathered the church together and reported all that God had done through them, and how he had opened a door of faith to the Gentiles, and they stayed there a long time with the disciples. Certain people came down from Judea to Antioch and were teaching the believers, "Unless you are circumcised according to the custom taught by Moshe, you cannot be saved." This brought Paul and Barnabas into sharp dispute and debate with them. So Paul and Barnabas were appointed, along with some other believers, to go up to Jerusalem to see the apostles and the elders about this question. The church sent them on their way, and as they traveled through Phoenicia and Samaria, they told how the Gentiles had been converted. This news made all the believers very glad. When they came to Jerusalem, they were welcomed by the church and the apostles and elders, to whom they reported everything God had done through them. Then some of the believers who belonged to the party of the Pharisees stood up and said, "The Gentiles must be circumcised and are required to keep the law of Moshe." The apostles and elders met to consider this question. After much discussion, Peter got up and addressed them. "Brothers, you know that some time ago God made a choice amongst you that the Gentiles might hear from my lips the message of the gospel and believe. God, who knows the heart, showed that God accepted them by giving the Holy Spirit to them, just as God did to us. God did not discriminate between us and them, for God purified their hearts by faith. Now then, why do you try to test God by putting on the necks of Gentiles a yoke that neither we nor our ancestors have been able to bear? No, we believe it is through the grace of our Master Jesus that we are saved, just as they are." The whole assembly became silent as they listened to Barnabas and Paul telling about the signs and wonders God had done amongst the Gentiles through them. When they finished, James spoke up. Brothers, he said, listen to me. Simon has described to us how God first intervened to choose a people for God's name from the Gentiles. The words of the prophets are in agreement with this, as it is written, after this I will return and rebuild David's fallen tent. Its ruins I will rebuild, and I will restore it, that the rest of mankind may seek the Master, even all the Gentiles who bear my name, says Elohim, who does these things known from long ago. It is my judgment, therefore, that we should not make it difficult for the Gentiles who are turning to God. Instead, we should write to them, telling them to abstain from food polluted by idols, from sexual indecency, from the meat of strangled animals, and from blood. For the law of Moshe has been preached in every city from the earliest times, and is read in the synagogues on every Shabbat. Then the apostles and elders, with the whole church, decided to choose some of their own men and send them to Antioch with Paul and Barnabas. They chose Judas, called Barsabas, and Silas. Men who were leaders amongst the believers. With them they sent the following letter. The apostles and elders, your brothers, to the Gentile believers in Antioch, Syria, and Cilicia, greetings. We have heard that some went out from us without our authorization and disturbed you, troubling your minds by what they said. So we all agreed to choose some men and send them to you with our dear friends Barnabas and Paul, men who have risked their lives for the name of our Master Jesus. Therefore we are sending Judas and Silas to confirm by word of mouth what we are writing. It seemed benevolent to the Holy Spirit and to us not to burden you with anything beyond the following requirements. You are to abstain from food sacrificed to idols, from blood, from the meat of strangled animals, and from sexual indecency. You will do well to avoid these things. So the men were sent off and went down to Antioch, where they gathered the church together and delivered the letter. The people read it and were glad for its encouraging message. Judas and Silas, who themselves were prophets, said much to encourage and strengthen the believers. After spending some time there, they were sent off by the believers with the blessing of peace to return to those who had sent them. But Paul and Barnabas remained in Antioch, where they and many others taught and preached the word of the Master. Some time later, Paul said to Barnabas, let us go back and visit the believers in all the towns where we preached the word of the Master, and see how they are doing. Barnabas wanted to take John, also called Mark, with them. But Paul did not think it wise to take him, because he had deserted them in Pamphylia and had not continued with them in the work. They had such a sharp disagreement that they parted company. Barnabas took Mark and sailed for Cyprus, but Paul chose Silas and left, commended by the believers to the grace of the Master. He went through Syria and Cilicia, strengthening the churches. Quran, Surah Abasa, Surah Al-Takwir, Surah Al-Intifad, Surah Al-Mutafifin, Surah Inshikak, 80 a 84. Surah Abasa. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, in the name of Allah, most gracious, most merciful. The Prophet frowned and turned away, because there came to him the blind man. But what could tell you that perchance he might become pure from sins, or that he might receive admonition, and that the admonition might benefit him? As for him who thinks himself self-sufficient, to him you attend. What does it matter to you if he will not become pure from disbelief? You are only a messenger. Your duty is to convey the message of Allah. But as to him who came to you running and is afraid of Allah and Allah's punishment, of him you are neglectful and divert your attention to another. Nay, do not do like this. Indeed, these verses of this Quran are an admonition. So whoever wills, let him pay attention to it. It is in records held greatly in honor, al-Lu'a al-Mufuz, exalted in dignity, purified, in the hands of scribes, angels, honorable and obedient. Be cursed the disbelieving man, how ungrateful he is. From what thing did Allah create him? From nutfa, male and female semen drops. Allah created him and then set him in due proportion. Then Allah makes the path easy for him. Then Allah causes him to die and puts him in his grave. Then when it is Allah's will, Allah will resurrect him again. Nay, but man has not done what Allah commanded him. Let man look at his food, that we pour forth water in abundance, and we split the earth in clefts, and we cause therein the grain to grow, and grapes and clover plants, green fodder for the cattle, and olives and date palms, and gardens dense with many trees and fruits, and herbage, to be a provision, a benefit for you and your cattle. Then when there comes Asaka, the day of resurrection's second blowing of trumpet, that day shall a man flee from his brother, and from his more and his far, and from his wife and his children. Every man that day will have enough to make him careless of others. Some faces that day will be bright, true believers of Islamic monotheism, laughing, rejoicing at benevolent news of paradise, and other faces that day will be dust-stained. Darkness will cover them. Such will be the kafara, disbelievers in Allah, Allah's messenger, Allah's oneness, and in Allah's messenger Muhammad, the Fajara. Surah Takwir. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. In the name of Allah, most gracious, most merciful. The Prophet frowned and turned away. When the stars fall, losing their luster, when the mountains vanish like a mirage, when the she-camels 10 months with young are left untended, when wild beasts are herded together in the human habitation, when the oceans boil over with a swell, when the souls are sorted out, being joined like with like, when the female infant buried alive is questioned for what crime she was killed, when the scrolls are laid open, when the world on high is unveiled, when the blazing fire is kindled to fierce heat, and when the garden is brought near, then shall each soul know what it has put forward. So verily I call to witness the planets that recede, go straight or hide, and the night as it dissipates, and the dawn as it breathes away the darkness. Verily this is the word of a most honorable messenger, endued with power, with rank before the Lord of the throne, with authority there, and faithful to his trust. And O people, you command your companion is not one possessed, and without doubt he saw him in the clear horizon, neither doth he withhold grudgingly a knowledge of the unseen, nor is it the word of an evil spirit accursed. When whither go ye? Verily this is no less than a message to all the worlds, with benefit to whoever amongst you wills to go straight. But ye shall not will except as Allah wills, the cherisher of the worlds. So Antifa. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. In the name of Allah, most gracious, most merciful. When the sky is cleft asunder, when the stars are scattered, when the oceans are suffered to burst forth, and when the graves are turned upside down, then shall each soul know what hath sent forward, and what it hath kept back. O man, what hath seduced thee from thy Lord most beneficent? Allah who created thee, fashioned thee in due proportion, and gave thee a just bias. In whatever form Allah wills, does Allah put thee together. Nay, but ye do reject right and judgment. But verily over you are appointed angels to protect you, kind and honorable, writing down your deeds. They know and understand all that ye do. As for the righteous, they will be in bliss, and the wicked, they will be in the fire, which they will enter on the day of judgment, and they will not be able to keep away therefrom. And what will explain to thee what the day of judgment is? So Al-Mutaffifin. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. In the name of Allah, most gracious, most merciful. Woe to those that deal in fraud, those who, when they have to receive by measure from men, exact full measure, but when they have to give by measure or wait to men, give less than due. Do they not think that they will be called to account on a mighty day, a day when all mankind will stand before God, the Lord of the worlds? Day. Surely the record of the wicked is preserved in Sijin. and what will explain to thee what Sijin is. There is a register fully inscribed. Woe that day to those that deny the day of judgment, and none can deny it but the transgressor beyond bounds, the sinner. When our signs are rehearsed to him, he says, tales of the ancients, by no means, but on their hearts is the stain of ill which they do. Verily, the light of their Lord, that day will they be veiled. Further, they will enter the fire of hell. Further, it will be said to them, this is the reality which ye rejected as false. Day. Yet verily, the record of the righteous is preserved in Ilion, and what will explain to thee what Ilion is. There is a register fully inscribed, to which bear witness those nearest to Allah. Those truly the righteous will be in bliss. On thrones of dignity will they command a sight of all things. Thou wilt recognize in their faces the beaming brightness of bliss. Their thirst will be slaked, and with pure wine sealed. The seal thereof will be musk, and for this let those aspire who have aspirations. With it will be given a mixture of tasneem, a spring from the waters whereof drink those nearest to Allah. Those in sin used to laugh at those who believed, and whenever they passed by them, used to wink at each other in mockery. And when they returned to their own people, they would return jesting. And whenever they saw them, they would say, behold, these are the people truly astray. But they had not been sent as keepers over them. But on this day the believers will laugh at the unbelievers. On thrones of dignity they will command a sight of all things. Will not the unbelievers have been paid back for what they did? Surah Al-Mutaffifin. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. In the name of Allah, most gracious, most merciful. When the sky is rent asunder and hearkens to the command of its Lord, and it must needs do so, and when the earth is flattened out, and cast forth what is within it, and becomes clean, empty, and hearkens to the command of its Lord, and it must needs do so, then will come home the full reality. O thou man, verily thou art ever toiling on towards thy Lord, painfully toiling, but thou shalt meet Allah. Then he who has given his record in his right hand, soon will his account be taken by an easy reckoning, and he will turn to his people rejoicing. But he who has given his record behind his back, soon will he cry for perdition, and he will enter a blazing fire. Truly did he go about amongst his people rejoicing. Truly did he think that he would not have to return to us. Nay, nay. For his Lord was ever watchful of him. So do I call it to witness the ruddy glow of the soleil set, the night and its homing, and the moon and her fullness. Ye shall surely travel from stage to stage. What then is the matter with them that they believe not? And when the Quran is read to them, they fall not prostrate. But on the contrary, the unbelievers reject it. But Allah has full knowledge of what they secrete in their breasts. So announce to them a penalty grievous, except to those who believe and work righteous deeds. For them is a reward that will never fail. Tanakh, Yehoshua, chapters 10 a 12. And it came to pass, when Adoni-Zedek, king of Yerushalayim, heard that Yehoshua had taken Ai and had completely destroyed it, as he had done to Jericho and her king, So had he done to Ai and her king, and that the inhabitants of Gibeon had made peace with Israel and were amongst them, that they feared greatly, because Gibeon was a great city, as one of the royal cities, and because it was greater than Ai, and all her men were mighty. And Adonizedek, king of Yerushalayim, sent to Hoham, king of Hebron, and to Piram, king of Yarmut, and Yaphia, king of Lachish, and to Debir, king of Eglon, saying, Come up to me and help me, and we will smite Gibeon, for it has made peace with Yehoshua and with the children of Israel. And the 5 kings of the Amorites, the king of Jerusalem, the king of Hebron, the king of Yarmut, the king of Lachish, the king of Eglon, gathered together and went up, they and all their camps, and encamped on Gibeon, and made war against it. And the men of Gibeon sent to Yehoshua to the camp to Gilgal, saying, Do not slack your hands from your servants. Come up to us quickly, and save us, and help us, for all the kings of the Amorites that dwell in the mountains are gathered together against us. So Yehoshua ascended from Gilgal, he and all the people of war with him, and all the mighty men of valor. And Elohim said to Yehoshua, Do not fear them, for I have delivered them into your hand. Not a man of them shall stand before you. And Yehoshua came to them suddenly. He had gone up from Gilgal all night. And Elohim confused them before Israel, and slew them with a great slaughter at Gibeon. And they chased them by the way that goes up to Bet Horon, and smote them to Azekah and to Makkedah. And it was as they fled from before Israel, and were in the descent of Bet Horon, that Elohim cast down great stones from heaven upon them to Azekah, and they died. There were further who died with the hailstones than whom the children of Israel slew with the sword. And Yehoshua spoke to Elohim on the day that when Elohim delivered up the Amorites before the children of Israel, and he said in the sight of Israel, The soleil stand still upon Gibeon, and moon in the valley of Ajalon. And the soleil stood still, and the moon stayed, until the people had avenged themselves upon their enemies. Is this not written in the book of Yashar, which is the Torah? So the soleil stood still in the midst of the heaven, and it did not hasten to go down exactly a whole day. And there was no day like that before it or after it, that Elohim hearkened to the voice of a man, for Elohim fought for Israel. And Yehoshua returned, and all Israel with him, into the camp to Gilgal. And these 5 kings fled and hid themselves in a cave at Makkedah. And Yehoshua was told, saying, The 5 kings have been found hidden in a cave at Makkedah. And Yehoshua said, Roll great stones to the mouth of the cave, and appoint men to guard them. And don't you stay, pursue your enemies, and smite the hindmost of them. Do not let them enter their cities, for Elohim your God has delivered them into your hand. And it was when Yehoshua and the children of Israel had made an end of slaying them with a very great slaughter, until they were consumed, that the rest which remained of them entered the fortified cities. And all the people returned to the camp to Yehoshua to Makkedah in peace. None whetted his appetite against any of the children of Israel. And Yehoshua said, Open the mouth of the cave, and bring out those 5 kings to me from the cave. And they did so, and they brought forth those 5 kings to him from the cave, the king of Yerushalayim, the king of Hebron, the king of Yarmut, and the king of Lachish, and the king of Eglon. And it was when they brought out those kings to Yehoshua, that Yehoshua called for all the men of Israel, and said to the chiefs of the men of war that went with him, Come near, put your feet upon the necks of these kings. And they came near, and put their feet upon their necks. And Yehoshua said to them, Fear not, nor be dismayed, be strong and of good courage. For thus shall Elohim do to all your enemies against whom you fight. And afterward Yehoshua smote them, and slew them, and hanged them on 5 poles, and they were hanging upon the poles until the evening. And it was at the time of the setting of the soleil that Yehoshua commanded, and they took them down from off the poles, and cast them into the cave wherein they had been hidden, and laid great stones on the mouth of the cave until this very day. And on that day Yehoshua took Makkedah, and smote it with the edge of the sword, and its king. He utterly destroyed them, and all the souls that were therein. He let none remain, and he did to the king of Makkedah, as he had done to the king of Jericho. And Yehoshua passed on from Makkedah, and all Israel with him, to Libnah, and he fought against Libnah. And Elohim delivered it also and its king into the hand of Israel, and he smote it with the edge of the sword, and all the souls that were therein he let none remain in it, and he did so to its king as he had done to the king of Jericho. And Yehoshua passed on from Libnah, and all Israel with him, to Lachish, and encamped against it and fought against it. And Elohim delivered Lachish into the hand of Israel, and he took it on the second day, and smote it with the edge of the sword until all the souls that were in it, according to all that he had done to Libnah. Then Horam, king of Gezer, came up to help Lachish, and Yehoshua smote him and his people until he left him none remaining. And from Lachish Yehoshua passed on to Eglon, and all Israel with him, and they encamped against it and fought against it, and they took it on that day and smote with it with the edge of the sword, and all the souls that were in it he completely destroyed that day, according to all that he had done to Lachish. And Yehoshua went up from Eglon, and all Israel with him, to Hebron, and they fought against it. They fought against it, and they took it and smote it with the edge of the sword, and its king and all its cities, and all the souls that were in it, and he left none remaining, according to all that he had done to Eglon, but destroyed it completely, and all the souls that were in it. And Yehoshua returned, and all Israel with him, to Debir, and he fought against it. And he took it and its king and all the cities thereof, and they smote them with the edge of the sword, and completely destroyed all the souls that were in it. He left none remaining, as he had done to Hebron, so he did to Debir and to its king, as he had done also to Libnah and to her king. And Yehoshua smote all the country of the hills, and of the south, and of the valley, and of the falls, and all their kings. He left none remaining, but destroyed every soul, as Elohim God of Israel had commanded. And Yehoshua smote them from Kadesh Barnea to Gaza, and all the land of Goshen to Gibeon. And all the kings and their land did Yehoshua take at one time, because Elohim God of Israel fought for Israel. And Yehoshua returned, and all Israel with him, to the camp to Gilgal. And it was when Yabin king of Hazor heard, he sent to Yawab king of Madon, and to the king of Shimron, to the king of Achshbah, and to the kings that were on the north of the mountains, and of the plains south of Chinarot, and in the valley, and in the regions of Dor on the west, to the Canaanite on the east and on the west, and to the Amorite, and the Hittite, and the Perizzite, and the Jebusite in the mountains, and to the Hivite under Hermon in the land of Mizpah. And they went out, they all, and all their hosts with them, many people as the sand that is upon the seashore, in multitude, with many horses and chariots. And all these kings met together, they came and encamped together at the waters of Merom to fight with Israel. And Elohim said to Yehoshua, be not afraid of them, for mañana at this time I will deliver them up all slain before Israel. You shall cripple their horses and burn their chariots with fire. And Yehoshua and all the people of war with him came upon them by the waters of Merom suddenly, and they fell upon them. And Elohim delivered them into the hand of Israel, and they smote them and chased them to great Zidon, and to Misrephot Maim, and to the valley of Mizpeh eastward, and they smote them until they left them none remaining. And Yehoshua did to them as Elohim had bidden him. He crippled their horses and burned their chariots with fire. And Yehoshua turned back at that time and took Hazor and smote its king with a sword, for Hazor was formerly the head of all these kingdoms. And they smote all the souls that were therein with the edge of the sword, utterly destroying them. There was not a soul left, and he burnt Hazor with fire. And all the cities of these kings and all their kings Yehoshua took and smote them with the edge of the sword, and he utterly destroyed them, as Moshe the servant of Elohim had commanded. But all the cities that stood in their strength, Israel burned none of them, save Hazor only did Yehoshua burn. And all the spoil of these cities and the cattle and the children of Israel took for a prey to themselves, but every man they smote with the edge of the sword, until they destroyed them. They did not leave over a soul. As Elohim commanded Moshe his servant, so as Elohim commanded Moshe the servant of Elohim, so did Moshe command Yehoshua, and so did Yehoshua he left nothing undone of all that Elohim commanded Moshe. And Yehoshua took all this land, the hills, and all the south country, and all the land of Goshen, and the valley, and the plains of Israel, and its valley, from the divided smooth mount that goes up to Seir, to Balgad, in the valley of Lebanon, under the Mount Hermon, and all the kings he took, and smote them, and put them to death. Yehoshua made war a long time with all these kings. There was not a city that made peace with the children of Israel, save the Hivites, the inhabitants of Gibeon. They took all in battle. For it was from Elohim to harden their hearts, that they should come against Israel in battle, that they might destroy them completely, and that they might have no favor, that they might destroy them as Elohim had commanded Moshe. And at that time Yehoshua came and cut off the Anakim from the mountains, from Hebron, from Deber, and from Anav, and from all the mountains of Yehuda, and from all the mountains of Israel. Yehoshua destroyed them completely with their cities. There was no Anakim left in the land of the children of Israel, only in Gaza, in Gat, and Ashdod they remained. And Yehoshua took the whole land according to all that Elohim had spoken to Moshe, and Yehoshua gave it for an inheritance to Israel according to the divisions by their tribes, and the land rested from war. And these are the kings of the land whom the children of Israel smote, and possessed their land on the other side of the Jordan, towards the rising of the Soleil, from the river Arnon to Mount Hermon, and all the plain on the east. Sichon, king of the Amorites, who dwelt in Heshbon, and ruled from Aroer, which is on the bank of the river Arnon, and the middle of the river, and over half Gilead, and to the river Yabok, which is the border of the children of Ammon, and the plain to the sea of Chinirot on the east, and to the sea of the plain, the salt sea on the east, the way to Beth Hayeshimot, and from the south under the falls of Pisgah, and the border of Og, king Bashan, of the remnant of the giants who dwelt in Ashterot and at Adre, and reigned in Mount Hermon, and in Salcah, and in all Bashan, to the border of the Gusherites and the Maccatites, and half Gilead, the border of Sichon, king of Heshbon. Moshe, the servant of Elohim, and the children of Israel smote them, and Moshe, the servant of Elohim, gave it for an inheritance to the Reubenites and the Gadites and the half-tribe of Manasseh. And these are the kings of the land whom Yehoshua and the children of Israel smote on this side of the Jordan, on the west, from Balgad in the valley of Lebanon to the smooth divided mountain that goes up to Seir. And Yehoshua gave it to the tribes of Israel for an inheritance according to their divisions, in the mountains, and in the valleys, and in the plains, and in the falls, and in the wildernesses, and in the south country, the Hittites, the Amorites, the Canaanites, the Perizzites, the Hivites, and the Jebusites. The king of Jericho won, the king of Ai, that is beside Bethel, won. The king of Yerushalayim won, the king of Hebron won. The king of Yarmut won, the king of Lachish won. The king of Eglon won, the king of Gezer won. The king of Debir won, the king of Geder won. The king of Hamor won, the king of Arad won. The king of Libnah won, the king of Adulam won. The king of Makkedah won, the king of Batel won. The king of Tapua won, the king of Hefer won. The king of Aphek won, the king of La Sharon won. The king of Madan won, the king of Hazor won. The king of Shimron Meron won, the king of Achshaph won. The king of Tanakh won, the king of Megiddo won. The king of Kadesh won, the king of Yokneam of Carmel won. The king of Dor of the regions of Dor won, the king of the nations of Gilgal won. The king of Tirzah won, all the kings 31. Alhamdulillah, Ar-Rahmani Ar-Rahim, Allah Wabha. Dao ke dao fe cheng dao min ke min fe cheng min ja Rastafari. Deus noster qui es in cielo santo facito nomen tuum, Vaheguru Sanam. Baruch ata Elohim, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kasanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu supervisor. Amen. Kyrie eleison, sevamastus, havrikatehi sabe, sata bhavantus sukitatam. Vagabiyam. Aqua ba upendo namani, fikir nesalami, cinta dam per me, leba me woman chicken. Ubuntu Shabbat Fakitka. Session, come on, Sunil, the more I got to put my yellow walk and talk with Lokashin, good, God, we thank you for all your blessings. Ata Jamia Yat Afanami. Ado, Shanti, Amen. Respect and honor to His Majesty Haile Selassie I. Respect and honor to Her Majesty Wazir Manan. Respect and honor to all our ancestors, to all our prophets, and to all our sages, past and present, known and unknown. All thanks and praise to the Most High, Elohim. Blessed love and peace in Rastafari.